Welcome to the Rent to Rent Success podcast, all about creating consistent cash flow, escaping the 9-to-5, and really living life on your terms. This is the only podcast entirely dedicated to helping you achieve rent to rent success. It's our place to inspire each other to believe bigger, to be bolder, and to be game changers for good. I'm Nicky Taylor, your guide on this exciting ride. Let's start up the engines and get ready to fly. Welcome to episode 2 of the Rent to Rent Success podcast. And in today's flight, we're going back to basics about what rent to rent really is and why so many people get it wrong. And first of all, I want to thank you for all your messages of how much you've been enjoying the podcast. Thanks so much. It really does encourage and inspire me to keep going. It means the world to us and it helps others to find us too. So please do, if you're enjoying it, subscribe and review the podcast. But for now, let's dive in. Rent to rent can be simple if you have all of the right information. But a lot of people who I speak to are starting out and they're confused. And it's often because they've only got a part of the picture. So they've been trying to piece things together they've been trying to piece the whole strategy together from Facebook posts and YouTube videos, but they've got pieces missing. And as a result, they're struggling and they're not getting the results they want. So let me break it down for you. Rent to rent in a nutshell. Usually you'll rent a property for 3 to 5 years. You pay the owner or the letting agent a guaranteed rent, and usually you're going to take on paying the bills. You rent the property out to tenants for a higher amount than you're paying the owner. And the difference between the rent you receive from your tenants and the rent you pay to the owner after all of the costs of running the property is the profit that you make for your business. And it's an incredibly efficient business model because of 4 crazy good things. Number 1, little money is required to start up. Most businesses take many thousands of pounds, sometimes tens of thousands of pounds to get started. Rent to rent is got very low money is required to start up. And we'll be coming on to that in a later podcast. Number 2 is that you can be profitable within a few months, and most businesses are not profitable in the first year. Number 3 is that you've got that consistent recurring cash flow every month. Most startups don't have that recurring revenue. And number 4 is that you have got the names and addresses of your perfect customers. It's almost too good to believe. So it's just a really efficient business model. And I love the fact that at its very simplest, you rent out a property. It's something that thousands of people are doing every single day. And at this point, I'm usually greeted with a very confused look. And the question on most people's lips is, but how can you achieve higher rents than the landlords or the letting agents? Well, when people do rent to rent, there are 3 ways that they usually do this. So I'm going to take each of them in turn. The first one is where you have house shares, sometimes called HMOs, houses of multiple occupation. And this is where you let out each bedroom in a property individually. And you might use a ground floor reception room as a bedroom as well. So most people are familiar with student house shares where each person has got their own bedroom and they share a bathroom and kitchen with their fellow housemates. It's very similar, except that we usually rent out to professionals, though it can work for renting out to students as well. So rent to rent works whether you're taking on a family house and you're changing its use to be a house share, or whether you are renting an existing HMO. Hello, would you like to start your rent-to-rent business step by step with us? Book a rent-to-rent strategy session with me to find out more about the Kickstarter program and to see whether it's right for you. Go to rent2rentsuccess.com/call. That's rentsuccess.com/call. I can't wait to speak to you about your goals and to answer any questions you may have, and more importantly, to help you start your rent-to-rent success story. So people get the first one. When you take a single family let and change it into an HMO, it's easy to see how the property is going to be more profitable when it's rented out by the room. So let's just take an example. In some areas, a 4-bed family home you could rent out for £900. Having the same property as a 5-bed HMO at £400 a room, you'd be achieving £2,000 rental income. Now, the difference with HMOs is mostly HMO landlords will pay the utility bills. So even after allowing for the utility bills and running costs, it's likely that the property would earn then around £1,500 a month compared with £900. So you can see why when you change a family home or a single let into an HMO, you can make more money. But the thing that then people say is, well, how can you make more money if it's already an existing HMO? And that is what we normally work for. And that is why Article 4, which means that in some areas you can't, or you can no longer change a single family home into an HMO without going through an expensive and convoluted planning process. But even in Article 4 areas, rent to rent will still work. And that's because you can use existing HMOs. In the area where we are, it is the equivalent of an Article 4 area. And so we work exclusively with existing HMOs, and our business is very successful. So I want to talk to you because that might be a barrier in your mind, thinking, well, I can't do this because of Article 4. This is how you make money with an existing HMO, because people then think, how can you achieve higher rents by when the property is already receiving house share rents? And the way that you can do that is by the simple system, which many landlords and letting agents are unaware of. So we do a light refurbishment of the property, and we'll come to that in the further episode, because sometimes we pay for that refurbishment and sometimes the owner pays. And then we dress the rooms attractively and we give great service. And what that means is that we can take HMOs which are not performing well, and we can achieve higher rents consistently. And those are what we're going to show you over this series of podcasts. So keep tuning in. So that's the first model of rent to rent, is with HMOs. The second one is with serviced accommodation. Here, you take a property and typically you rent it out on a by the night basis. And usually that will be as a whole unit rather than by the room. So say, for example, you've got a 2-bedroom flat, which you might rent out for £800 a month. And you could then be renting that out at £50 a month, which is equivalent to £1,520 a month. So that's almost double what you were getting. So what you're getting as a single let. So people get very excited about service accommodation when they see that potential income. However, the costs are also high because you've got the bills to include, the same as you'd have for an HMO. Plus you've got the costs of cleaning, you've got the cost of laundry, you've got the cost of online booking portals, and those are around 15%. So service accommodation at the end of the day is a hospitality business with guests. It's more time intensive, more costly to run. It has more marketing requirements because you're always looking for new guests. And occupancy can be really unpredictable, especially when you're new to the game. And many people find that they can lose money in their first year in spite of that really high income because of the really high costs and because it's so inconsistent. So we don't talk about this strategy because we see the best returns on your time and your money invested come from rent to rent HMO. It's a much simpler strategy. Are you ready to take the next step? But you still have so many questions unanswered. We got you. You can get your free Rent to Rent Success Guide at renttoRentSuccess.com/guide. That's rent number 2 rentsuccess.com/guide, and it'll walk you through what rent to rent is all about, and you'll see whether it's right for you. Okay, then. Now let's get back to today's show. So the third way that you might do rent to rent on a resi property is with single lets. Now, most people doing rent to rent will be doing one of the strategies above, either HMO or service accommodation. But there is also single let. So once you get started in rent to rent, you might find that some of your HMO landlords are asking you to also manage their single let properties. And what I mean by single let property is a property related to one group of people. So that might be a couple, it might be a family. And typically, single lets will require less management because you've got one group rather than 5 individual people or more. So also the potential for cash flow is going to be lower as well. Usually those rents would be lower of what you could get from a multi-let property. So I've included this so that you just know that that's also an option. It's not something that we choose to seek out, but it's an extra that we can offer to landlords who have single lets that they'd like us to manage. So now you understand how rent to rent works. You rent a property usually for 3 to 5 years. You pay the owner or the letting agent a guaranteed rent, and usually you're taking on paying the bills. You rent the property out to tenants for a higher rent than you're paying the owner, and usually you'd use HMO or service accommodation, but as I say, single let is also an option. The difference between the rent you receive from the tenants and the rent you pay out to the owners and agents after the property costs is your profit that you make for your business. And if you'd like to see some real life examples of this, then download the Rent to Rent Success Guide at renttoRentSuccess.com/guide. And that's rent, the number 2, rentsuccess.com guide. And what you'll see when you go over to the Rent to Rent Success Guide or when you watch our masterclass is that our first few properties cash flow between £408 a month for a 4-bed up to £1,222 on an 8-bed. And that's after all the costs. And it gets even better. Let me explain why 5 is the magic number. Because as every parent knows, from the point of having a baby to when your 5-year-old goes to school, the time goes very quickly and so much changes. It's crazy how the skills and ability of a 5-year-old boy compared with a baby. And it's the same in property. Take the steps, and within a short time, your life changes a bit. And within 5 years, it's changed beyond all recognition. And that's where the magic happens. Let me explain what I mean. So let's take a very average property. In 1 month, it's £500. That's the cash flow, the profit after all the costs. In a year, that £500 has turned into £6,000. And in 5 years, it's £30,000. Whoa. And let's take one of our more profitable properties. In 1 month, it's £1,222. That's the actual figure we worked out for that one. And in a year, it's £14,700. £664. And in 5 years, so every 5 years, the profit from that property is over £73,000. That's amazing, isn't it? When you think of having the extra of either £500 or having the extra of £1,222, I want to encourage you to think that little bit longer. What does this mean over a year? What does it mean over 5 years? And that's the power of changing your life. So the question is, can you imagine how amazing it would feel to have your first property? Imagine telling your family, friends, and colleagues and all the doubters that it really does work. How would it change your life if you had an extra, even £30,000 of extra income coming in over the next 5 years? So let's just stop for a second, because even with just the 2 properties that I've mentioned above, that is over £20,000 for 1 year. For some people, that's close to their full-time UK salary. And over 5 years is an extra £100,000. So let me ask you, how many properties would it take to replace your salary? What's your number? To replace an average UK salary, it takes between 3 and 5 properties on average. That's the power of Rent to Rent. I'd love you to DM me on Instagram and let me know what your number is. How many properties would you need? I'm at Stephanie T Property, and I would love to hear from you. And there's more. Rent to Rent can help you build your own property portfolio using lease options and other creative buying strategies. Now, when I first heard about this, I was so skeptical. I just didn't really believe that it was possible. So you could do it using the creative strategies I've mentioned, or you can buy properties buying conventionally, because you can save your cash flow for a deposit. Not everybody wants to escape their 9 to 5. Lots of people do, but not everybody does. So you might be building up that cash flow to invest in properties. The other thing you can do is that you being in property and getting great results for the people you work with will attract investors who want to share in your success. With interest rates at record lows and talks about negative interest rates, some of your friends and family will have savings in the bank that they'd much rather invest with you for a better return. And in the next episode, I'm going to talk about something which still blows my mind, and it's our experiences of buying properties worth over £1 million with some of these creative strategies and with some conventional strategies as well. So I hope you can join me then. That's it for this week, guys. I hope you have been enjoying this. And if you have, as I say, it would mean the world to me if you could please subscribe, rate and review the podcast. I do read all the reviews, and I really appreciate you for taking those few moments to writing them. Have a great rest of the week. And remember, believe bigger, be bolder, and be a game changer. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like the links for anything mentioned in today's episode, or if voice is not enough and you want to see us on video too, you can find all the show notes and lots more at renttoRentSuccess.com. That's rent number 2, rentsuccess.com. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we'd super appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to review it in your podcast app. Remember, we'll be donating to our B1G1 charities too for each review you give. Until then, believe bigger, be bolder, be a game changer.